Sometimes when you're little, you may pee your pants because you just can't hold it. Other times you may have had a nightmare and you wake up in a juicy mattress, but very rarely do kids wreck their pants all in the name of a joke. This particular piece of the story is why I can't help but believe that what this group of kids and an adult claim to have seen was at least real in one way or another. You shouldn't have to worry about it anymore since the last time this monster was seen was in 1952. And let me just add this. You may giggle at the prospect of some boys in the woods getting so scared that they have a little accident, but ask yourself this: do you really think you would have been much better had you come in contact with the Flatwoods Monster? Ever since the Flatwoods Monster was seen in the 50s, people from all around make their way to the Flatwoods, West Virginia to see the Monsters Museum. The museum is located on Main Street in downtown Sutton, just 2 miles from exit 62 on I-79. And what I love about this place is admission is free. Learning about the unknown should always be free, which is why I'm proud to be partnering with today's sponsor, me. I don't charge for the videos, but everyone joining on Patreon always helps. And just seriously, to all my dashing explorers and weathered adventurers, thank you so much. But anyway, the town is extremely small, and at the time of its encounter, it only had around 300 people. And just to give you an example of how small that is, if you've ever been to one of those soulless big box stores where all of the employees are wearing vests and look depressed, that whole store has around 300 employees to run it. So it was a very small town in the low-timbered Appalachian hills of central West Virginia. The Appalachian wilderness itself is home to extremely strange creatures, cryptids, and people, so it seems the Flatwoods Monster really has found a home in these woods. That is, unless it's left this planet. And just as a little disclaimer real quick, I'm not talking about everybody that lives in Appalachia, I'm talking about those exceptional weirdos. You know who you are. It was around 7:15 and two brothers, 13-year-old Edward May and 12-year-old Fred May, were outside playing with one of their buddies, Tom Heyer. He was 10 years old. As they were playing outside and being boys, they looked to the sky and saw an incredibly bright light. This encounter was on September 12th in 1952, and since this was a month before daylight savings time, the sun went down around 8:30, so whatever they saw in the sky had to have been bright since the sun itself was at golden hour. If you've ever driven into the sun at golden hour, you know what I mean. So the boys see this light in the sky and watch what it appears to be doing, which is coming to a rest on some land that belonged to one of the local farmers. Once they saw this, they ran off to tell the May brothers' mother, Kathleen. They told their mom that they had seen this large bright red light fly across the sky and land in the hills off in the distance. Kathleen was intrigued enough that she decided to accompany her sons and their friend to see what it was. Whether this was just to appease their curiosity or to play along with what she thought was a strange and silly game, I'm not entirely sure, but I do have to say the word of your kids in the countryside back in the 50s was much different than your word of your kids nowadays. Today we just have so much technology all around us showing us monsters of all sorts. Most parents wouldn't believe their kids if they said they saw something in the sky. As the four made their way to the supposed landing location of this light, they'd be joined by 14-year-old Neil Nunley, 10-year-old Ronnie Shaver, and 17-year-old West Virginia National Guardsman Eugene Lemon, who had also brought his dog along. So here you have kids as young as 10 years old, a mother of two of them, a few other kids, and a 17-year-old that was in the National Guard. This was not the most ideal group for coming up with stories that are absolutely outrageous, and we'll get into that bit more towards the end. As they all walked off towards the hills in an attempt to find this odd light in the sky and where it landed, Eugene's dog ran ahead of them until it was out of sight. They heard the dog's feet running until it faded away and could no longer be heard, but was replaced by the sound of it barking. I'm assuming that because it was barking that they weren't concerned about whatever it was the dog had found. After all, this was the countryside, and there's no shortage of wildlife for domestic animals to run after. So the dog barked, and then it went silent. The air in the woods was heavy and still until it was broken by the sight and sound of the dog running back to the group, whimpering and crying with its tail literally between its legs. And again, this is the countryside, so it could have been a skunk or a porcupine or a coyote that scared off the dog. But because they were in such a large group, I think that they didn't feel as though they had anything to be afraid of. They walked about another quarter mile until they made it up to the top of the hill, and this is where things took a turn for the strange. The group said that upon arriving at the hill, they saw a large pulsating ball of fire that was about 50 feet off to the right. Along with this ball of fire was a powerful mist that made their eyes and nose burn. Along with this fire and mist, the group saw two small lights over to the left of the ball of fire. It was under an oak tree that was near the two objects. Lemon had brought along a flashlight, and the sun was on its way down. Real quick, for those of you that haven't had the pleasure or displeasure of seeing how fast the sun sets in the woods, it feels as though 1 minute you have plenty of light, and the next, It's pitch black. So Eugene Lemon pulls out his flashlight and points it in the direction of the two lights next to the ball of fire, and it illuminates this massive creature. It seemed to be floating in mid-air with two arms, a body made of metal with bright eyes, and this large piece behind its head that looks something like a spade on playing cards. So here they are in the dark of the woods with a ball of fire towards the right of this giant monster that was illuminated by a single flashlight and the flash of the fire next to it. As they all stood in shock and disbelief, the creature gave a shrill hiss before slowly gliding toward them. But then it stopped. The red light they had originally gone in search of was now this creature's primary focus and began floating towards it. So as you can imagine, the group decided to make like a tree and get out of there. Their hearts were racing and they all made their way to the Mays home, nearly going into shock. Once Mrs. May had gotten inside with her boys and the others, she called the local sheriff, Robert Carr, along with the owner of a local newspaper, A. Lee Stewart. The newspaper owner, Stewart, came over and conducted a series of interviews with the witnesses. Then he and the sheriff, his deputy, and Eugene all went out to where they had seen the monster, and when they made it there, the creature was gone but seemed to have left behind an odor. Eugene said there was a sickening, burnt, metallic odor still prevailing. The sheriff and deputy searched the area but found no evidence of the encounter, which is interesting because you would think that a giant ball of fire would at least leave scorch marks on the area. You'd also think with a creature being so tall, it would have left a trail of broken branches or compressed the earth beneath it if it was being propelled by something to keep it afloat. The next morning on the 13th, Stewart went back to the site and saw two elongated tracks as well as trace amounts of a thick black fluid. He reported that this was evidence that there was an alien saucer having been there the night before, and thereby verifying the account by the woman and the kids, but later, it'd be found that there was a truck that had been in the area, so that's probably what these things were. Tracks from a truck and leaking oil. But don't let this be the end of your fascination with this whole encounter, because after this encounter, investigators associated with Civilian Saucer Investigation LA obtained a number of accounts from witnesses who claimed to have experienced a similar or related phenomena. In fact, the same smell and a creature of similar appearance was seen by a mother and her 21-year-old daughter. The encounter alone was so powerful that the 21-year-old had to be confined to Clarksburg Hospital for 3 weeks. The Civilian Saucer Investigation Group also collected statements from Eugene's mother, as well as the Board of Education. His mother had said that during the time before her son had gone out to find the source of the light, her house was violently shaking and her radio had cut out and wouldn't turn back on for almost an hour. The Board of Education, which was just one guy, said that he had seen a flying saucer take off at 6:30 on the 13th, the day after the encounter. Now, let me be the first to say the obvious. If aliens are really out there going from one planet to another, collecting data or specimens or some other third thing, this was probably the most believable instance of them being here, since it was reported one of the kids in the group had peed their pants. And that's what's really causing me to believe the story more than anything. That kind of thing is embarrassing enough as a little 5-year-old, but for this to have possibly happened to someone older and to have reported this still, that's saying something. And I personally don't think aliens have been here if they are real, but this is definitely a topic I'd be willing to look into if you guys have any other alien encounters you'd like me to cover. Just let me know down in the comments. But despite my disbelief, what we have here at the very least is a mystery, and where mystery lies, adventure awaits. If you like what I do and you want to help support me, then the best way to do that is by joining the community on Patreon. I post when I can and it goes a long way in supporting the channel. But if you're not into that, then just check out this video here that YouTube seems to think you'll love, and I'll see you there. So if you like what I do and you want to help support me, then the best way to do that is by joining the community on Patreon. Community? But if you're not into that, then just check out this video that YouTube seems to think you'll, oh my gosh, can't speak.